All right, we got a couple more calls, but Mark, you've been sitting patiently, so I really need to welcome you to the show. Good morning.
Thanks so much, Hal. It's good to see you this morning.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and you come in, you're going to run some ads, so we're going to record those after the show, but I did want you to weigh in on the whole FORA situation, what's going on there. Fort Ord Reuse Authority, keep Fort Ord while suing FORA, saying that they're engaging in self-dealing, and now we have a story which says that it appears that at least some folks on FORA are trying to reduce the fees that putative developers have to pay.
Yeah, it comes as something of a surprise that this meeting would be scheduled so quickly, and apparently as a result of lobbyists from Sacramento demanding reduction in fees in exchange for bargaining to allow the extension of the Fort Ord legislation and the legislation that created FORA to continue. The big concern that I've got is I'm not aware of any explanation as to why fees would be reduced, particularly given the fact that it does not appear that there's adequate funds to cover the cost of the off-site infrastructure. Right now, the people in North Monterey County are having a huge debate over whether or not to put in a toll road parallel to Highway 156. The vast majority of the traffic that's going to be created from the already approved 5,000 housing units at Fort Ord is traffic for which those developer fees are supposed to go to fix and complete the off-site infrastructure. So I'm not quite sure what the Fort Ord, the FORA Board of Directors is planning on doing to cover the cost of the off-site infrastructure. I certainly hope that they aren't planning on passing those costs on to the taxpayers.
Well, Bill Monning said that the developers wanted him to change the legislation that extended FORA for another 6 years to provide for a change in fee structure, which, as Jane Parker, Supervisor District 4, describes it, would turn the funding model on its head, which currently requires the developers to chip in first to pay for any kind of assessments of any developments that are proposed, any kind of environmental impact statements. They've got to pay for, at least pay for the majority of it. And she's saying this turns it on its head. It's the taxpayers who will be looked to fund it, and then if there's any additional costs, then the developers would have to pay for it. Bill Monning said, not so fast. We don't need to change the fee structure to extend FORA. And Jane Parker saying, I'm not real happy. I'm not on board with this. It sounds like you agree with both of them.
Well, I do. I think the big concern that everyone has is that fee structure was adopted during an earlier time when everyone was facing the actual cost, the real cost of what that off-site infrastructure bill is going to be. Lowering it at this point, it doesn't seem to be looking to the future as to what the needs of our constituents are going to be. And the other problem is I really hope that this is not an effort on the part of some people on the FORA board to make this Christmas in August for the developers or the putative developers at Fort Ord.
Well, you have to wonder about that, Mark, because the story yesterday, or actually it was Sunday, I got my days so confused, but Virginia Hennessy is the writer, and she has just done a tremendous job reporting this story in the Herald. But she reported on Sunday, let me get that right, that it appeared that there was an effort underway to cut down a grove of old oaks, of old-growth oaks, 300 years or more, that would perhaps clear the way for some roads or for maybe the 1,500 houses that haven't even been approved. There was a question as to whether that was even legal at all, given that the area is still zoned for open space, not for mixed use or for residential or something of that nature. So she said no, and apparently Scott Miller raised concerns as well, the sheriff, but Mr. Hulamart and Mr. Potter, they're the ones who are saying full speed ahead.
I think what's really telling is that the folks who were trying to give private briefings to the FORA members offered a briefing to Scott Miller, the sheriff, and he basically demanded that the meetings be opened up to the general public.
So did Supervisor Parker. They were very concerned about this.
Indeed, and it strikes me as really odd that one of the explanation was for the hurry up and let's get this done was there was not adequate time to actually post a notice and hold a public meeting. I mean, this has only been going on for the better part of 15, 16 years now, so I'm not quite sure who it was who made the decision that they didn't have enough time to post a 72-hour notice and hold a public meeting so that the public could provide input as to whether or not there are even any munitions at the site that is proposed to be clear-cut.
By the way, there is going to be a public meeting tonight, as I understand it, and that is going to be a relatively brief. There's going to be a closed-door session from 5:30 p.m. at the Carpenters Union Hall, and then, according to Ms. Hennessy in the Herald today, the open portion of the meeting will be sandwiched in before a 6:30 p.m. public hearing. So they're going to meet the developers, the lobbyists with the politicians, and then there's going to be a public hearing at 6:30 p.m. But part of that meeting, they'll apparently open the doors, but maybe for 10-15 minutes. Who knows how much time, if any, will be given to the public to inquire of the lobbyists what their goals are.
I certainly hope that this is not an effort to somehow exclude the public from participating in what's a really important issue here.
You know, I said, Mark, I don't like this. I don't like the development. I don't think we need a horse park. It doesn't scream at me as the right way to move forward in our county. I want sustainable businesses, not the event-driven kind, and ones that are I would always prefer locally owned and operated. This is not in that vein. But ultimately, as long as it's fully briefed, the public understands what's going on, has a chance to let legislators know, lawmakers know, and perhaps even weigh in with a referendum. My preference isn't ultimately determinative, and it should not be. But I don't think anyone can dispute that this needs to be conducted because of its importance in an above-board fashion, straightforward.
I think that's exactly correct, Hal. I mean, this needs to be vetted in front of the public. The public needs to have every opportunity to comment on this. It's going to affect everyone in the county. It is going to affect traffic patterns in Prunedale. It's going to affect traffic patterns for people who commute from Salinas to Silicon Valley every day. It's going to clearly have a huge impact on Highway 1. And the commute that people have to go through every morning and every afternoon. It's going to impact Highway 68. These are issues that the public needs to participate in.
Well, we got a break coming up, and we'll talk to you on another occasion. Certainly, Mark, I'll speak to you after the show as well. I thank you for your time, but just real quick, the election's coming up in November. The poll, I don't know if there are any polls, but the numbers probably don't look that good for Supervisor Potter. Could this be like a last-ditch attempt by him to get something through before you take office that maybe will benefit a contributor?
This is a really difficult situation, and I don't understand what the great rush is between now and November.
Well, neither does, and I mentioned Nancy Selfridge, sort of a more conservative member from Monterey. She has kind of come a little bit over towards the maybe more progressive group. She said the same thing. Why do we need to rush this? We've already got houses approved and they're not being built.
When you already have 5,000 paper lots approved, you don't need to rush an additional 1,500.
All right, we're going to be back after this. Thanks for listening to AM 540 AM.